Hello and welcome to the Janome channel. My name is Serena. Happy New Year. And with the new year comes a fresh start and new beginnings. And in my family, we're going to have a new baby and I'm going to be a new aunt again. So in honor of celebrating new life and a fresh start, I'll be making the baby's coming home outfit as requested by my lovely sister. If you're interested in seeing the materials that I'm going to be using to create this outfit, and the machine that I'll be doing it with, the Janome Skyline S9, then go ahead and like and subscribe. And now let's get into the video. For today's fabric, I'm using a sweater knit. It's quite stretchy and it's a cute sage green. The only instructions I was given was cozy, so I found this picture online as a reference and I sent it to my sister, which she approved. I chose the color myself. Well, it turns out that's exactly what she wanted. All of the little accessories and things she's taking to the hospital is this exact color green. So I was already off to a good start. Now I'm cutting out the pattern and I am using some fabric scissors. I would prefer a rotary cutter. I feel like it gets the most exact cut without the fabric kind of shifting, but I only have a dull blade and a dull blade is a very dangerous blade, so I went with the scissors instead. I think one of the best things about a homemade or handmade baby gift is embroidery, so I'm going to be using the embroidery function on my Skyline S9 to add a little bit of a personal touch to this piece. I've already nicknamed the baby Cub, so I'm going to put a little teddy bear on this piece. Initially, I wanted to embroider the entire piece with bears, but I decided to just play it safe and do a small test piece. This didn't come out exactly the way I wanted because the lime green or the sage green is still showing through the stitches, so I'm going to do a couple more test stitches to narrow down what I needed to do. Here are the other test stitches and I'm not happy with the way it turned out, but I did notice that the lighter colors thread I have, the better it ends up looking. On the first stitch, I just used a tearaway stabilizer, and then on the final stitch, I ended up using a fusible interfacing behind the fabric before putting on the tearaway stabilizer, and I feel like that turned out with the best results. I went with a yellow and green teddy bear. Now it's time to assemble the romper or pajama, if you will. Starting with the shoulders, I'm going to be seaming these at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now it would be ideal to use a serger to stitch up this garment, and Janome has a wonderful collection of sergers to choose from. However, one of the disadvantages to using a vintage sewing machine is, or the ones that I choose to use, is that knits didn't come out or weren't normally used within the home until after a lot of my machines were manufactured. So they don't sew knits quite as well. So I wanted to see how well the Janome stitched out an entire garment made of knits because it's something that I've never had a chance to do, and this is my first time doing it on this machine. This is a great demonstration for beginners because a lot of the times beginners don't invest in a whole fleet of sewing machines and usually they only go with one. So it's great to have a combination machine that can embroider, stitch wovens, stitch knits, and have it all in one machine. Knits don't have to be finished because they don't fray. However, while going through the manual on this machine, I did see that there is an option to do kind of a cover stitch on this machine specifically for knits. So I love that there's that option as well. As you can see, this piece is coming together rather quickly. I used a little bit of interfacing on the placket for the buttons. This will help stabilize the material so it doesn't tear where I put the buttons. If you were going to put buttonholes, then that's really important. In my case, I'm going to be hand sewing some snaps on and then putting buttons over the top so it looks as though it buttons up, but it has the ease for my sister so she's not having to fuss with buttons with a wiggly baby. Now with the sleeves right sides together, as you saw in the previous clip, I had a notch that I lined up with the shoulder seam to make sure that everything lines up perfectly, and then I go around a 1/4 of an inch on this sleeve. I am making a size newborn because my sister tends to have smaller babies, and I've never actually had to make a newborn size outfit before, and the sleeves were looking quite short and it was making me nervous because even though this is a coming home outfit, I still wanted it to look really nice. So in the end, I remedied that because in the example photo, the baby's cuffs and legs were rolled. So I figured if I end up making them too long, she has the options of rolling them up like in the example photo that I had sent her. So once the sleeves are on, I put the entire outfit right sides together and then I start sewing up the side seams. My seam stitch of choice with this machine is the medium stretch stitch. It's a very tight zigzag that gives the maximum amount of stretch without having to see the thread pulling when the seams come apart. Also, you don't want to use a straight stitch for something like this because you will pop the seams. Then I go in and start measuring out the buttons that I'm going to use, and again, these are just decorative, so I'm also going in and measuring out where the snaps will be, and I am hand sewing all of this. These are the little details that I feel like I put my heart into. I wanted a very organic feel, so I went with wooden buttons. I found these light brown ones that look like it goes well with the teddy bear, so I start stitching these on. Just as soon as I was done stitching these on, I sent a photo to my sister to get her thoughts on the piece, and she told me that she would prefer a darker button. This was kind of my fault because originally I showed her a darker button, but once I showed her that button, I realized that I was going to have a time finding all of the same color buttons for this piece. So I found the tan ones, figured they matched the bear really well, and I went with these. Little sisters are going to little sister no matter the fact that we are all adults. So I went back and took all of these buttons off and replaced them with the dark brown, like coconut shell buttons. And she was happy, and ultimately I was happy too. I also liked that the buttons that I went with were quite bigger. These match the dark brown outline that I have on the bear, so it does still go well together. Here are the snaps. They look wonderful. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below which set do you prefer. No one else in my family could choose. They liked them both, and so I ultimately went with brown to make my sister happy because, you know, any amount of happy in the late stages of pregnancy is worth it. I added a cuff to the sleeves as well as the legs. This is how I remedied the length issue that I was fumbling with, because I just know in my heart of hearts that the length is going to be necessary. And now I'm working on a cute little hat. This is a very simple hat. I prefer bonnets, but my sister is more modern, so I figured she might like a hat a little bit better. Plus, it'll be less to fiddle with and not have to tie anything around the baby's neck. But I wanted to add a little bit of extra, and because I call the baby cub, I wanted to add little bear ears to it. And that's when I decided that I should probably put the baby's initial on the ear, so I converted the machine back to its embroidery function, which was really quick because the stretch stitch plate is the same as the embroidery stitch plate. And so I change out all of the feet that I need to, and then I embroider a little C on there. I went with a color that matched the bear, and I also think it's really cute that I call the baby cub, and the baby's first letter of its name is a C. Much like earlier, I prepped this fabric by adding some iron-on interfacing as well as a tearaway stabilizer, and then I embroider a C. Once I put the C on that test strip, then I cut the shape out after the fact. I put the two ear pieces right sides together, then I sew around 1/2 inch. Because this is faced and you won't be able to see the inside, it's unnecessary to have to serge, so you just trim the seam allowance, press it, and then you're pretty much done with the ears. I am quite impressed with how well this machine stitched out the knits. Usually I have to deal with a lot of skip stitching, and these are things that I did not have to deal with, not even once on the Janome. I did use a stretch stitch needle for this project. I used it for both embroidering and sewing, and I feel like I got better results using it for embroidery than when I did my first test stitch on the teddy bear and I used a standard needle. As someone who sews vintage exclusively, and mainly the eras that I do sew in are prior to knits being in home sewing, I am thoroughly impressed with how smoothly this process went, because that's not usually the case with me, and knits tend to drive me crazy. I do feel like I'd be more inclined to use them more often if I'm using the Janome instead of my vintage machines. I'm really happy with how this project turned out, and I can't wait to see it on the newest edition of my family. Thank you so much for clicking on and watching this video. I truly appreciate it, and it was so fun to do and demonstrate for you guys. It was a pleasure to make for my sister, and please consider liking this video and subscribing, as well as following Janome over on Instagram and their other social media. If you like content like this, you'll look forward to seeing some of Janome's most talented makers, so a subscription will make sure that you never miss an upload. Thank you so much again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!